30 meters below South Africa, past a crawl narrower than your shoulders, 15 bodies were found neatly arranged on bare stone. The species, small-brained, not human, yet uncannily like us, should have vanished 2 million years ago. Instead, scientific dating shatters everything. They were alive as Homo sapiens emerged, human-style burials, daring cave journeys, and bodies left in impossible darkness. If this was not us, who was it, and how did they pull off the unthinkable? The story begins the moment 2 explorers crawled into that ancient abyss. Rick Hunter and Stephen Tucker pressed their bodies into the mouth of the Rising Star Cave, their helmets scraping the limestone. The only way forward was a slit just under 10 inches high, Superman's crawl. One arm pinned at their sides, the other stretched ahead. They inched through on their chests, lungs squeezed tight, rock pressing in from all sides. After the crawl, the path twisted deeper, dropping into a vertical chute that measured just 18 centimeters wide, narrower than a letterbox. For 12 meters, they had to chimney down, bracing their feet and backs against stone, unable to turn or retreat. Every movement was calculated, every breath measured, as the light from their headlamps flickered against the walls. At the bottom, the passage opened into the Dinaledi Chamber, known as the Chamber of Stars. The air was still, untouched by wind or sun. The beam of a headlamp swept across the floor and caught something pale. Bones, thousands of them, scattered across the mud, not buried or fossilized, but lying on the surface as if left there yesterday. Skulls, femurs, tiny finger bones, all mingled together in the thick silence. No evidence of collapse, no sign of animal intrusion, no river gravel or debris. Just a dense carpet of ancient remains, undisturbed and unclaimed. Hunter and Tucker stood in a place no human had ever reached before. The chamber was 30 meters underground, sealed away by a passage so tight that only the smallest cavers could fit. There was no other entrance, no shortcut. The geometry of the cave itself made the presence of so many bodies a riddle. How could anything have ended up here, let alone 15 individuals of the same species? The chamber's isolation was absolute. No predator could have dragged bodies through the chute. No flood could have swept them down. The bones belonged to no other creature but a single unknown hominin. The field of bones stretched beyond the reach of their lights. Each step risked disturbing remains that had not been touched for hundreds of thousands of years. The chamber was a forensic scene, untouched by the usual chaos of nature. No tooth marks, no gnawed ends, no jumble of animal species. Only Homo naledi, scattered from infants to elders. The physical impossibility of the chamber's access raised a new question. If these bodies did not fall, wash, or crawl in by accident, then what or who brought them here? The answer would demand a new kind of investigation. Standard excavation teams, laden with gear, could not reach this place. The cave itself set the rules. Only those who could survive the squeeze, the drop, and the darkness would be able to recover what lay hidden in the Chamber of Stars. Lee Berger, a paleoanthropologist at the University of the Witwatersrand, faced a problem no excavation manual could solve. The Dinaledi Chamber held a treasure trove of ancient bones, but the only path in was a pinch barely wide enough for a child's shoulders. The world's leading fossil hunters, with decades of experience and sturdy frames, simply could not fit. Berger turned to an unlikely solution. He put out a call on Facebook for scientists who were not only skilled in archaeology and caving, but also small enough to slip through an 18-centimeter gap. The post spread quickly. Applications poured in from around the globe, each one weighed not just for academic credentials, but for height, weight, and grit. This was an impossible entrance, and it demanded an equally extraordinary response. 6 women were chosen: Marina Elliott, Becca Peixoto, Hannah Morris, Aliyah Gurtoff, Kay Lindsay Hunter, and Ellen Feuer-Eagle. They became known as the Underground Astronauts. Their training was relentless. They rehearsed the route through Superman's crawl, the climb up Dragon's back, and the slow descent down the 12-meter chute, all while carrying excavation gear and wearing protective suits. Every step demanded teamwork, trust, and the ability to stay calm in the dark. The risk of panic or injury was real, and the team practiced emergency evacuations and learned to communicate by relay, since radios often failed deep underground. The chamber itself was another world. Light vanished within seconds of switching off a headlamp. The air was thick and unmoving. Each astronaut worked in shifts, sometimes spending up to 10 hours at a time in the cave. They dug in a space barely large enough to sit upright, careful not to disturb the delicate layers of mud and bone. Every fossil was logged, bagged, and passed hand to hand through the narrow chute to the surface, where another team waited to begin the painstaking process of cataloguing. The system was precise, almost military, with no food or unnecessary equipment beyond a certain point, strict contamination controls, and constant monitoring for dehydration or exhaustion. Over 21 days, the astronauts recovered 1,550 fossil elements, more than had ever been found in a single African hominin site. The remains belonged to at least 15 individuals, from tiny infants to elders. There were skulls, teeth, long bones, vertebrae, and even the fragile bones of hands and feet. The diversity was staggering. The chamber had preserved a cross-section of an entire population, a window into a vanished world. The scale of the find was matched only by the effort required to bring it to light. Every bone, every fragment, was a testament to the persistence and ingenuity of the team that risked everything to recover them. The underground astronauts emerged from the cave, changed, exhausted, exhilarated, and carrying the story of a species no one had expected to find. The first bones lifted from the Dinaledi Chamber did not fit any single story of human evolution. The skull fragments, when pieced together, revealed a brain barely the size of an orange, 450 to 550 cubic centimeters, smaller than any modern human and closer to a large chimpanzee. Yet the shape of the cranium, especially the frontal lobes, hinted at something more complex than its size suggested. The hands, freed from the mud, told a different tale. Their fingers were long and deeply curved, the kind of adaptation seen in tree climbers, built for gripping branches and hauling bodies up vertical surfaces. But at the tips, the bones broadened and flattened, forming pads almost indistinguishable from our own, capable of the precision grip needed for manipulating tools. The shoulders added another contradiction. Wide and set high, with a configuration more like that of an ape, they were designed for powerful overhead movement, perfect for climbing, but awkward for throwing or carrying loads the way humans do. The ribcage was narrow at the top and flared at the bottom, forming a trunk that recalled ancient Australopiths rather than the barrel shape of Homo sapiens. Then came the feet. Unlike the hands and shoulders, the foot bones matched those of modern humans almost detail for detail. The arches were present, the toes straight and aligned, the heel robust, everything needed for efficient upright walking over long distances. The ankle joint allowed a smooth stride, not the stiff, awkward gait of earlier hominins. Even the proportions of the legs, long relative to the arms, spoke of a body built for life on the ground, not in the trees. The contrast was striking, and the feet looked unambiguous, almost modern in every essential feature. Teeth and jaws offered their own set of puzzles. The molars were small, with thin enamel, suggesting a diet not unlike that of early Homo, while the jaw itself was more robust, hinting at ancient roots. Each trait, examined in isolation, seemed to belong to a different species. The hands and shoulders pointed back to the trees, the feet and legs to the savanna, the brain to a primitive ancestor, but the face and teeth offered flashes of something more familiar. Scientists struggled to find a label for this combination. Some called it a mosaic, others called it Mr. Potato Head, an organism assembled from evolutionary leftovers and innovations, blended in ways that defied the old straight-line models of progress from ape to human. The expectation had always been that big brains and modern bodies arrived together, step by step, over millions of years. But Homo naledi refused to cooperate with that script. Its anatomy was a living contradiction, a reminder that evolution branches and doubles back, creating forms that seem impossible until they are uncovered in the darkness. For many researchers, the only explanation was age. Such primitive features, especially the small brain and climbing shoulders, must mean that Naledi belonged to a deep, ancient chapter of the human story, perhaps 2 million years ago, when the first Homo species were just beginning to emerge. The bones themselves, lying loose on the chamber floor, offered no immediate clues. Without the anchor of time, all that remained was the puzzle of a creature that walked like us, climbed like an ape, and thought with a brain a third the size of our own. The search for answers would have to turn to the rocks and sediments that entombed the bones, and the hidden clocks that tick within teeth and stone. Dating the bones from the Dinaledi Chamber became a race against expectation. When the fossils first reached the lab, nearly every specialist bet on deep antiquity, 2 million years old, maybe more. The skulls looked primitive, the hands and shoulders belonged to climbers, and the brain was no bigger than an orange. The story seemed set. Homo naledi was a relic from the dawn of the human line, a distant ancestor lost in time. But the truth lay hidden in the chemistry of teeth and stone. To find it, researchers turned to electron spin resonance, ESR, on 3 teeth recovered from the chamber. This method reads the invisible scars left by natural radiation, counting the years since the tooth last saw sunlight. At the same time, uranium-thorium dating was applied to the flowstones, thin layers of mineral that sealed the fossils into the cave floor. These minerals absorb uranium from water and slowly transform it into thorium, ticking off the centuries in atomic ratios. Together, the methods formed a double lock, cross-checking each other for accuracy. The samples were shipped to independent labs around the world. Each team ran their own tests, blinded to the expectations in the field. The results arrived in a wave of emails and phone calls, numbers that did not fit any script. The oldest fossils, it turned out, were not millions of years old. They were between 335,000 and 236,000 years old, barely a blink in the geological record. The cave flowstone capped the fossils at the younger end, while the ESR signals in the teeth set the upper boundary. The window was narrow, precise, and impossible to ignore. For the first time, a primitive hominin with a tiny brain was living in southern Africa at the same time as early Homo sapiens. Around 300,000 years ago, as our own species was beginning to spread across the continent, Homo naledi was alive in the shadows, walking upright, climbing, and somehow ending up deep in the rising star cave. The old image of a single straight ladder of human progress collapsed overnight. Evolution was not a march from simple to complex, but a tangle of branches, some ancient, some modern, all coexisting. The news sent shockwaves through anthropology. If these bones were so young, their presence in the cave demanded new explanations. How did a small-brained species survive in a world already populated by our own kind? And what were they doing, carrying their dead into a pitch-black chamber 30 meters underground? The timeline twist forced every assumption back onto the table. The real mystery was no longer just what Homo naledi was, but what it was capable of. The next question was not about age, but about behavior, and whether intelligence could be measured by brain size alone. Bones in the Dinaledi Chamber tell a story not through what is present, but through what is missing. Each fragment was examined for the telltale signs of predators, pitted surfaces, gnawed edges, puncture marks, but none appeared. The bones showed no evidence of being chewed or dragged, no scoring from teeth, no digestion etching that would suggest a carnivore's den. This absence is striking. In South African caves, hyenas and leopards often leave behind a jumble of prey, their marks carved into every surface. Here, only Homo naledi remains surfaced. No lions, no antelope, no hyena bones mixed in. The chamber is a single-species deposit, a pattern almost unheard of in natural cave assemblages. Sediment analysis deepened the mystery. Geologists searched for traces of flowing water, rounded pebbles, cross-bedded sands, gravel deposits that might point to ancient floods. The muds in Dinaledi were fine, undisturbed, and local. They lacked the sorting and layering that rivers or debris flows leave behind. No evidence pointed to a flood sweeping bodies in from above. The chamber geometry, with its narrow vertical chute and sealed passages, ruled out large-scale water transport. Even slow, standing water would have carried in silt and animal debris, but the floor held only the bones of Homo naledi, scattered in the mud. Taphonomic studies mapped every break and crack. Most fractures matched the slow pressure of sediment settling, not the violence of tumbling rocks or trampling animals. Weathering patterns spoke of bodies decomposing in place, undisturbed by scavengers or the elements. The distribution of bones suggested whole bodies entered the chamber, then slowly fell apart over time. No mass death event or catastrophic collapse could explain the steady, repeated presence of so many individuals, each one somehow brought through darkness into this hidden space. The evidence pointed to a deliberate act carried out again and again by hands that belonged to Homo naledi. Dark streaks line the ceilings of the Dinaledi Chamber, clinging to the limestone in places where no sunlight has ever reached. In 2023, researchers announced that these blackened patches contained microscopic particles consistent with soot, carbon residues that in many caves signal the burning of torches or open flames. The evidence seemed to suggest a startling possibility that Homo naledi, with a brain no bigger than an orange, may have carried fire into the depths. Fire would have been the only way to navigate the labyrinth, a world of absolute darkness, 30 meters below ground, through a maze of stone. Near the bone clusters, another puzzle appeared. On a patch of smoothed wall, shallow cross-hatchings cut into the rock, lines that intersect at angles and form a pattern some called a hashtag. Berger's team proposed these were engravings, deliberately made, perhaps as symbols or markers. If true, these would be among the oldest known abstract markings in any hominin cave, predating the earliest Homo sapiens art by tens of thousands of years. Yet not all scientists are convinced. Critics point out that soot can form naturally from fungi or mineral reactions, and that the black coatings have not yet been securely dated to the time of Naledi. The cross-hatchings too might be the product of erosion, animal scratches, or recent cave activity. Peer-reviewed analyses are still underway. For now, the evidence is tantalizing but incomplete. Did a small-brained species master fire and mark its world with symbols in the dark? The cave holds its secrets, waiting for the next layer of proof. Today, scientists debate what counts as truly human. Homo naledi's tiny brain rewrites that standard, proving that ritual, fire, and meaning may run deeper than intelligence alone. As new discoveries challenge the old textbook story, our own origins look less certain and more crowded. In the dark, another species found its way. So who else might still be missing from our family tree? Share your thoughts below.